Sighs, say it. Say what you have to say, Wu Jin. That was the sentence Nayla had rehearsed for 3 days. 3 days of standing at that stove, stirring, breathing, swallowing every word before it could escape her mouth. And still, when the moment arrived, she said nothing. She stood at the stove in their Seoul apartment, back to the door, spoon moving slow circles in the pot. The kitchen smelled like palm oil and garlic, like home, like her mother's hands. Outside the window, the city was already gray and moving, but in here the air was still, heavy with everything that had not yet been said. The door opened at 7:02 a.m. She didn't turn around. Wu Jin walked in the way he always did, quietly, socks on the hardwood, the familiar creak of the second floorboard. She knew the sound of him the way you know a song you've heard too many times to count. She knew the pause he took in the doorway whenever something felt off. She could feel that pause now, stretching, filling the kitchen like smoke. "Good morning," he said. "Morning," she answered. Her voice was even. "Careful." He moved to the counter. She heard him pour water. Heard the cup set down. Heard him look at her. She could always feel it when Wu Jin was looking at her, something in her spine that registered it like weather. She placed breakfast on the table without turning. Rice. Braised tofu. The soup is still steaming. She arranged his chopsticks the way she always did, parallel, never crossed. He sat down. She sat across from him. They ate in silence. He watched her hands. The way she lifted her spoon and brought it to her mouth without looking at him. The way she set it down without the small sound it usually made, that tiny clink of a woman fully at ease. She was somewhere else. Completely somewhere else. And she was working very hard to make sure he didn't know where. 3 days ago. One image. A face on a screen. A name in a caption. A man she had loved for 2 years, standing next to a stranger who was not a stranger, who was, in fact, everything she had never known to ask about. Then back to the kitchen. Wu Jin set his chopsticks down across his bowl. The sound was gentle but deliberate. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on the table, and he looked at her, really looked at her, with those dark, patient eyes that had, once upon a time, made her feel like the most seen person in any room. He said her name. Nayla. She looked up. His eyes held the question his mouth hadn't yet formed. The question she had been both dreading and waiting for, because silence, she had learned, was only bearable until someone named it. Welcome to Afro Soul Cinema. This story is for everyone who has ever loved someone and discovered, in the middle of that love, a truth that changed the shape of everything. If this is your first time here, welcome home. Subscribe, leave a comment below, and let us know, have you ever swallowed a secret to protect a feeling? We write these stories for you. Now, let's go back. Seoul arrived in Nayla's life the way all second chances do, unexpectedly, and wearing ordinary clothes. She had come for the job. Marketing strategist, mid-sized firm, competitive salary, relocation package. She had not come for anything else. She was 29 years old, freshly finished with a relationship she had spent 2 years trying to save and 6 months trying to forget, and she wanted, more than anything, to work. To be useful. To be somewhere no one knew her name yet. The firm was clean and modern, glass walls and white corridors and the kind of quiet that meant everyone was concentrating. She arrived early on her first day, found her desk, opened her laptop, and began organizing the way she always did, systematically, without fuss. She noticed him the way you notice something at the edge of your peripheral vision. He walked in 15 minutes late, coat still half on, laptop tucked under one arm, speaking Korean into his phone with the particular tone of someone handling something he'd rather not be handling. He glanced across the office, and for half a second his eyes landed on her, the new face, and he gave a brief, professional nod before moving on. She noted, tall, unhurried, slightly distracted. Not relevant. She went back to her screen. The first real moment came 3 weeks later. It was past 9 in the evening, and most of the office had emptied out. Nayla was still at her desk working through a campaign pitch, the kind of work she liked best, when the building was quiet and the ideas could move freely. She had her earbuds in. Music low. She didn't hear him approach until he said, "The gradient on the header, it pulls the eye wrong." She looked up. He was standing a few feet away, coffee in hand, looking at her screen with the focused expression of someone who had opinions and no particular apology for having them. She pulled one earbud out. I looked at her screen. I looked back at him. "It's intentional," she said. "The tension draws attention before the eye settles." He considered this. Tilted his head slightly. Then gave a small nod, not the nod of someone conceding, but of someone genuinely recalibrating. He said. And walked away. The next morning there was a coffee on her desk. No note. She looked across the office. He was already in a meeting, back to her. She drank the coffee. It was exactly how she took it. She had mentioned it once, in passing, 3 days before, to a colleague standing near him. She filed this away. Said nothing. The coffee kept appearing. Once a week, then twice. Then every morning without fail, as reliable as sunrise, as quietly deliberate as everything he did. They developed a language of small acknowledgments, a raised chin across the room, a brief exchange about whatever project was live that week, the occasional comment that lingered slightly longer than professional necessity required. Then came the rain. A Tuesday in November. The kind of rain that makes Seoul look like a film still, wet dark streets and headlights diffused through water. They ended up in the same cab by accident, both heading in the same general direction, both too wet and too tired to negotiate anything else. They sat in the back and talked for 45 minutes. She learned, he grew up between 2 cities, loved architecture, couldn't cook anything more complex than ramen, thought most meetings could be emails, and had a habit of reading 3 books simultaneously because he could never decide which story he was most in the mood for. He learned, she grew up in Lagos, could cook for a small army from memory, thought most people made decisions before they understood their own motivations, and had moved to Seoul, in part, to disappear into the texture of a life that was entirely her own choosing. You wanted to start over, he said. Not unkindly. Observationally. I wanted to begin, she corrected. Starting over implies something failed. This is just beginning. He looked at her for a moment longer than the sentence required. Then turned to the window. I understand that, he said quietly. More than you know. The cab stopped. Hers first. She stepped out into the rain. She didn't look back. But she thought about it for days. The evening he showed up at her door was 3 months later. No call. Just a knock, and when she opened it, Woo Jin, slightly damp, holding 2 paper bags of takeout with the helpless expression of a man who had just done something he had probably talked himself out of twice before doing it. I didn't know if you'd eaten, he said. I was about to cook, she said. Oh. He didn't move. Should I leave? She looked at him for a moment. Then stepped back from the door. "Come in," she said. "I'll heat the jollof." She made jollof rice and egusi soup from what she had in the kitchen. He ate 2 full plates with the focused seriousness of someone discovering something for the first time and not wanting to miss any of it. He asked questions about the food, not politely, genuinely: what was in it, how she learned, what her mother's version tasted like versus her own. They talked until 2 a.m. About Lagos and Seoul. About loneliness that looks like independence. About what it means to love a city that was never designed with you in mind. About families, the weight of them, the grace of them, the particular grief of carrying people who cannot carry you back in quite the same way. When he finally left, standing at her door with his coat on, he looked at her in that quiet way he had, the way that never rushed anything. "Same time next week," he said. "You'll have to call first," she said. He smiled. "I will." He did. Every week after that, without fail. The relationship grew the way real things grow, slowly, without announcement. A hand found in the dark during a film. A forehead against a shoulder on the subway home. Arguments about inconsequential things that were never really about the inconsequential things. The specific comfort of learning someone's sleep patterns, their silences, the difference between the face they show the world and the face they only show you. They moved in together 8 months later. Her idea, his immediate yes. Life settled into something she had not let herself hope for in a long time, warm, ordinary, and entirely real. That was the thing she would keep coming back to, after. Not the grand gestures. Not the extraordinary moments. The ordinary ones. The mornings. The cooking. The quiet of 2 people who had learned to breathe in the same rhythm. She had built something here. She had believed in it completely. Take a breath with us for a moment. This is the part of the story that costs something to read. If you're still here, thank you. Subscribe if you haven't. Share this with someone who understands that love is not always the loudest thing in the room. Drop a comment below, we read every single one. Now let's go back to 3 days ago. 3 days ago. The apartment was quiet in the particular way it got when Woo Jin was at the office late. Nayla had made tea, changed into something comfortable, opened her laptop at the kitchen table with the half-distracted focus of someone who had done this routine 1,000 times. She was building a campaign pitch. New client, a heritage brand looking to reposition for a younger market. Standard work. The kind she could do with one part of her mind while the other part was somewhere else entirely. Research phase. She typed in the firm's founding history. Read through the corporate overview. Clicked through the timeline. And then a name stopped her. Kim Jae-won. Chairman. Founder. Kim Group Conglomerate. She stared at the name. Something moved through her, not alarm yet, just recognition. The particular feeling of a piece of information landing slightly wrong, like a step you expected to be level that drops an inch further than your foot prepared for. She clicked further. A company profile page. An about section with photographs from the firm's history. A photo loaded. An older man, Kim Jae-won, the caption confirmed, standing at a company anniversary event 2 years ago. Formal setting. Expensive suits. Arranged smiles. Standing beside him, one hand in his pocket, looking slightly to the left of the camera with the particular expression of someone more comfortable observing than being observed. Woo Jin. She read the caption. Kim Woo Jin, heir to the Kim Group Conglomerate, Currently serving in the firm's international expansion division. Inhale. She sat very still. She read it again. Every word. Slowly. The way you reread something when your mind refuses, on the first pass, to absorb what it is actually saying. Kim Woo-jin. Air. Kim Group. She closed the laptop. Not quickly. Not with anger. The deliberate, measured movement of a woman making sure her hands remained steady while everything underneath them was shifting. She sat in the silence of their kitchen. The one she had cooked 200 times. The one where he had sat across from her and eaten her food and asked about her mother and told her things, she had believed, that he had never told anyone else. Sighs, she didn't call anyone. She didn't pick up her phone. Didn't type his name into a search engine and go deeper, though part of her wanted to. The part that I had learned, from experience, is that when you go looking for the full architecture of a truth, you have to be prepared to live inside it once you found it. Not tonight. Tonight she needed to think. She stood up. Went to the kitchen. I opened the refrigerator. Stood in its cool light for a long moment before she reached in and began to cook. It was what she did when she needed to process something, not talk it through, not dissect it immediately, but cook. The act of it grounded her. The chopping, the heat, the smell of things becoming something other than what they started as. She understood that. She trusted it. When Woo-jin came home that evening, the apartment smelled of cardamom and onions and something rich and slow. He walked in. Set his bag down. Looked up at her with the easy, grateful expression of a man who has come home to warmth and cannot quite believe his luck. You cooked, he said. Sit down, she said. It's almost ready. She served him. She watched him eat. He talked about his day, a difficult client, a colleague who kept missing deadlines, a lunch that had run an hour too long. She listened. She nodded. She offered the right sounds in the right places. And she watched his face, really watched it, looking for the things she might have missed. The performance. The calculation. The careful management of what he let her see. She couldn't find it. That was, somehow, the most disorienting part. He looked exactly like himself. He sounded exactly like himself. He reached across the table at one point to take a piece of food from her plate, something he had done 100 times, and the gesture was so easy, so unconsciously familiar, that something in her chest contracted sharply. Exhale, 3 days of this. 3 mornings of standing at the stove while he moved behind her. 3 evenings of cooking and serving and watching. 3 nights of lying next to him in the dark, listening to the sound of his breathing, and asking herself the question she had not yet allowed herself to answer. Who is this man? And, did he let you believe you knew him, or did you just decide not to look? Back to this morning. Now. The kitchen table. The steam rising from the soup. The sound of the city outside, moving on without them. Woo-jin set his chopsticks down. He looked at her directly. Nayla. A pause. Then, why? Just that. One word. But in it, everything. Why are you not here? Why are your eyes somewhere else? Why have you been serving me food for 3 days as though I am a guest in my own home? Why? Sighs, she looked at him for a long moment. Then she stood. I walked to the stove. Picked up the spoon and began stirring the pot that did not need stirring. She heard him push back his chair. I heard him cross the kitchen. Felt him stop behind her, not touching, not crowding, just present. Waiting. The way he always waited. The patience of his had been one of the first things she'd loved. It had always felt like respect. Now she wasn't sure what it felt like. Nayla. Softer this time. Breath, she set the spoon down. She turned around. Leaned back against the counter with her arms crossed, not defensively, she told herself. Just to keep herself contained. She looked at him. I was doing research, she said. 3 days ago. Routine stuff, campaign pitch, client background, founding history. She paused. I found a photograph. Something moved across his face. Brief. Gone almost immediately. But she saw it. She had learned to see everything. A photograph, he said. You. And your father. She watched his jaw tighten. The caption was very clear, Woo Jin. Kim Woo Jin. Heir. Kim Group. She said it quietly, without drama, because she had used up all the drama in her own head over the last 3 days and had arrived here at something quieter and more dangerous, grief. Why didn't you tell me? He didn't answer immediately. That was one of the things she had always respected about him. He didn't fill silences just to fill them. He thought before he spoke. But right now, standing in their kitchen with the morning light coming in sideways and her heart barely holding its shape, the pause felt like altitude. I was afraid, he said. She waited. When I started at the firm, not as Kim Jae-won's son, just as Woo Jin, just as another person doing work they cared about, I was. He exhaled. Sighs, I had spent my whole life being looked at a certain way. People adjusted to me before they even knew me. Calculating. Careful. Even the people who said they weren't. And you thought I would do that. I thought everyone would do that. Because everyone always had. She looked at him. The honesty in his face was not a performance. She had watched him perform, in work settings, in social settings, and she knew the difference. This was not that. This was a man standing in a kitchen at 7 in the morning telling her a true thing that cost him something to say. When did it become something you were hiding from me specifically, she said. Because there's a difference between not announcing it and actively concealing it. We have been living together for 14 months, Woo Jin. When did it stop being omission and start being? She stopped. Breathed. A choice, she finished. Breath, he held her gaze. About 6 months in, he said. When I realized I was going to love you. The sentence landed in the room like something dropped from a height. Because by then, he continued, I was terrified. Not of you knowing. But of what it would cost us if you did. Whether you would look at me differently. Whether what we had, the version of it that felt real, that felt like us, just us, would survive it. So you decided that for me, she said. You decided I couldn't be trusted with the truth about who you are. No. That's what it means, Woo Jin. When you protect someone from a truth about yourself, you're deciding they can't handle it. You're making the choice for them. I didn't get to decide whether it mattered. You took that from me. Gasps, the silence that followed was different from the silence of the past 3 days. The past 3 days had been hers, built and maintained and inhabited alone. This one was shared. It was the silence of 2 people who had finally arrived at the same place after traveling different routes. He didn't defend himself. Didn't offer a counterargument. He absorbed what she had said the way you absorb something that is true, not with argument, but with recognition. You're right, he said. I took that from you. And I'm sorry. She looked at him. Does any of it feel real to you? She asked. The question she had been carrying heaviest. Or was this, something easier than your actual life? Someone you could be ordinary with, because your actual life didn't allow you to be ordinary. He stepped closer. Not to reach for her, just to close the distance. This is my actual life, he said. You are my actual life. The rest of it, the name, the family, the expectations, that is what I come home to escape. This, he looked around the kitchen. Their kitchen is the only place I have ever felt like I was just a person. Because of you. Because of who you are and how you see, and the fact that you never once let me be anything less than honest with you, even when I was trying to be. She felt something in her chest loosen, not break open, not release entirely, but shift. The way a fist unclenches. Not because the pain is gone, but because the grip is no longer sustainable. I'm not fixed, she said. I know. And you're not forgiven. Not yet. I know that too. He didn't look away. I'm not asking you to fix it right now. I'm asking you to let me try. The silence broke open. Softly. Like morning. Nayla stepped away from the stove. She moved back to the table. Sat down in her chair, the one that was hers, the one she had always chosen, the one closest to the window. She looked at the man across from her. Not at the name. Not in the photograph. Not at the secret that had sat between them for months like a stone at the bottom of a river, present, heavy, invisible until the water ran low enough to see it. She looked at him. The man who had left coffee on her desk without asking if she wanted it. Who had eaten her jollof rice with 2 full plates worth of sincerity. Who had sat across from her at 2 a.m. and talked about loneliness without flinching. Who had asked, once, what it sounded like when she was happy, not what it looked like, not what it meant, what it sounded like. The man who had been afraid. She knew something about being afraid. About building a version of yourself that could survive the loss of the thing you loved most, just in case. About the particular cowardice of people who are brave in every other room but the one that matters. She had been there. She understood the architecture of that fear even when she hated what it had built. The question she had to answer for herself, sitting in that chair, in that kitchen, in the gray Seoul morning, was not whether she was hurt. She was. She was deeply, quietly, particularly hurt in the way that only the people closest to you can hurt you, because they know where the unlocked doors are. The question was, is the man sitting across from me the same man I fell in love with? She sat with it. Let it be a real question, not a rhetorical one. And the answer that came back, slowly, the way the truth tends to come when you're not demanding it, was, yes. And also, more complicated than yes. And also, you are going to have to learn him again, differently this time, with the full picture, and that is going to cost something. And also, you think it might be worth it. Exhale. She reached across the table. She took his plate, which he had stopped eating from, and slid it back in front of him. Eat, she said. It's getting cold. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Not a declaration or a resolution or a clean ending with a bow on it. Just a door. Left open. Wu Jin looked at her. Something in him, something she could see moving beneath the surface of his face the way weather moves beneath water, settled. He picked up his chopsticks. They ate together. In silence. But this time the silence was different. It was no longer a wall between them. It was not the silence of secrets or suspicion or the careful performance of a woman who had decided to wait before breaking. It was the silence of two people at the very beginning of something harder and more honest than what they'd had before. The silence of a foundation being cleared, not destroyed, cleared, so that what came next could be built on ground that both of them had actually seen. Outside, Seoul kept moving. The city didn't slow for anyone. It never had. But in that kitchen, in that ordinary morning, time had the decency to be still for just a moment longer. She had spent 3 days cooking in silence. In the end, the silence was not where things ended. It was where they finally, carefully, chose to begin. Thank you for staying until the end. This story was made for the ones who know what it means to love someone deeply and still feel the distance of a truth you haven't yet crossed. If it moved something in you, subscribe, share it with someone who needs it, and leave a comment telling us, what would you have done in Nayla's chair? We're listening. Don't forget to comment on part 2 if it really breaks something in you. Until next time, Afro Soul Cinema. This story is written by Afro Soul Cinema. An original production. All characters are fictional.